You sit there, quietly staring at the phone screen. No new messages, no explanations, just a long, cold silence. He once made you feel special, but now he walks away. Not a word spoken, no glance back. And you wonder, if he cared about me, why did he leave? This question must have haunted many, but could this silence be a sign of something deeper? Could it be genuine affection hidden behind the withdrawal? Carl Jung once said that every answer you seek outside already lies within you, not in the actions of the other person, but in your soul's response to what is happening. Do you feel empty, afraid, self-blaming, or strangely at peace? Whatever it is, these are secret clues to your worth and the truth about this relationship. In today's video, we will decode the hidden signs that show he truly cares, even if he is walking away. Not through reason, not through speculation, but through the light of the unconscious, through archetypes, through intuition, all that Jung left as a compass for the journey of loving and understanding yourself. Stay until the end, because the truth does not lie in the answers he never spoke. It lies in your response and the awakening waiting within you. Number 1. Jung and the truth hidden behind silence. Some silences do not come from tranquility, but are signs of a storm quietly forming in the heart. When a man suddenly grows distant, when he falls silent without reason or explanation, we often react with familiar anxiety. What did I do wrong? Does he no longer love me? Am I not good enough? These questions pierce self-esteem like silent needles. But Carl Jung would not advise you to chase those answers. He would urge you to do something else, listen within. For Jung, what matters is not what happened, but what it awakens in you. He warned with the words, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Imagine this. You're sitting in a cafe in the heart of the city, a steaming latte in front of you. The sun still rises, passers-by rush along, but your heart feels empty because of a message that never arrived. He was once the one who sparked your faith, the one whose eyes lit up with warmth when you laughed together. But now, that light is gone, not through a fight, not through a proper goodbye, but through a void. And you're left with an echo. Silence. According to Jung, this silence is not random. It not only speaks of him, it mirrors you. In the unconscious of every person lie suppressed fragments, unprocessed emotions, forgotten memories, unnamed fears. And whenever someone walks out of your life, it triggers that door to open. Why does this silence hurt so much? Why can't you let go, even when you're no longer loved? It's not because he's so special. It's because his absence awakens an old wound in you, perhaps from childhood, from a memory of abandonment, from the feeling of never being chosen. Jung called this the shadow, pushed into darkness, where the unconscious holds it like ghosts in the deep cellar of the soul, until an event, like him walking away, brings it all to the surface. This is not mere theory. Look at your own experiences. How many times have you been drawn to those who are hard to hold, who make you feel special, Now picture yourself again, sitting alone, phone empty, heart in turmoil. But this time, imagine a version of you who acts differently. Instead of sending another message, instead of scrolling through old chats for clues, you sit up, place a hand on your chest and ask, "What is my body telling me? Does this feeling seem familiar? Is this the first time I've feared being left behind?" That, for Jung, is the act of bringing consciousness to the unconscious. And it's the only way to break the cycle, not by understanding him, but by understanding you. His silence is not a void for you to fill with anxiety. It is an opportunity, a living symbol to access the deepest, unacknowledged parts of yourself. Jung likened the unconscious to an ocean, vast, deep, and sometimes frightening. But like the ocean, it does not appear to drown you. It appears to teach you how to swim. And the truth is this: if you dare to listen to the signals within, from the pain, from the rejection, from the silence, you will no longer need to guess whether he cares, because you will have begun to care for yourself. And that is the most powerful signal Jung wants you to recognize. But something happens after that first awakening, something no one warns you about. The more you turn inward, the more you must face a part of yourself you've tried desperately to avoid, the shadow. Number 2, the shadow. The moment a man abandons you without explanation is the moment your shadow rises. It's not him who makes you doubt yourself. That doubt has always existed within you, waiting for a chance to take form. His departure is merely a mirror, reflecting the wounds you've tried to hide beneath a facade of strength, vitality, and wholeness. Jung defined the shadow as everything we refuse to accept about ourselves: weakness, jealousy, insecurity, the desperate longing to be loved at all costs. It's the part we conceal out of fear of judgment, fear of pain, fear of rejection. Yet, ironically, the very thing we refuse to face is what most powerfully shapes our lives. The fear of being abandoned, the feeling of being unworthy, the memory of being ignored as a child. All of these converge, vivid and profound, like an underground river beneath the surface. And then, with just one man turning his back, that river bursts its banks. Picture yourself standing before a large mirror in the dark. You can't see your face, only vague shapes, a silhouette, a shadow, an unfamiliar gaze. That is the shadow. And the man who makes you doubt yourself, who sparks your anger, longing, or despair, is a reflection of your shadow. Are you captivated by his confidence? Perhaps it's the courage within you that you haven't dared to embrace. Do you resent his coldness, his indifference? Perhaps it's the part of you that once dismissed your own emotions, telling yourself, "Don't be too weak, I have to be strong." Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Everything that unsettles you about another is a doorway into yourself." Imagine you're not in a formal relationship. He and you were never officially lovers, never had clear commitments. Yet there was a strange connection between you, late-night conversations, knowing glances, moments when he sought you out as a refuge from the world. You tell yourself you're fine with this open relationship. You tell your friends, "I don't need a label, I'm just enjoying the moment." But every time you see him with someone else, your heart constricts. Every time he goes silent for days, you check your messages, scroll through old conversations, searching for a clue about whether you were ever special. You feel hurt, but dare not name that pain, because you've declared, I don't need anything. And in that very moment, the shadow quietly takes shape. You're not hurting because he didn't choose you. You're hurting because you chose to diminish your own need to be loved, chose to become the woman who doesn't demand, doesn't need commitment, doesn't get jealous, doesn't show weakness. You're replaying an old role, perhaps from childhood, when you learned that to be loved, you had to be agreeable, not cause trouble, not need too much. If you've ever been in such a relationship, share one thing you've kept buried in your heart in the comments, because sometimes simply naming it is the first step to turning on the light for your shadow. Jung would not judge you, but he would point directly to this. You are living from your shadow, not from your true self. The shadow is not just a concept, it is a living memory. Jung didn't want you to destroy the shadow. He never said, get rid of it. On the contrary, he believed the shadow is a teacher. If you dare to face it, it will show you what needs healing. It is a map guiding you toward freedom, but you can only read it by shining a light into the darkness. You cannot grow by imagining yourself better than you are. You grow by confronting the darkness within and bringing it into the light. The truth is, the shadow has no power over you, unless you keep denying it. And the more you deny it, the more it manipulates you from behind. When you consciousness Jung termed the collective unconscious, where archetypes reside, primordial, vibrant images inherited across thousands of generations, etched into the human soul like spiritual DNA. In every woman, Jung said, there exists an ideal image of a man, an inner archetype he called the animus. Likewise, in every man lies the ideal image of a woman, the anima. These are not societal ideals, but collective archetypes, symbolic, emotional, and mystical. The anima, the woman within a man's soul, embodies emotion, intuition, allure, chaos, and magic. The animus, the man within a woman's soul, bears the face of ideals, strength, truth, leadership, and sometimes a possessive force. You may not love him for who he is. You love the image within you, and you project that image onto him. And so, he becomes magic, not because he's extraordinary, but because you've cast all the light from your psyche onto him, like a projector casting onto a silver screen. Jung saw this as an essential part of the process of love, but also its deepest trap. For when the light reveals itself, when you begin to see him as a real person, not a dream, disappointment is inevitable. If you don't understand this, you'll think love has died. But Jung would tell you, no, love hasn't died. The illusion is fading. Imagine walking into a dark room with only a flashlight in hand. You point the beam in one direction, and everything within that light becomes your entire perceived world. But what about the rest? It still exists. You just haven't illuminated it. When you fall in love at first sight, you're not truly seeing the other person. You're projecting your light onto them and mistaking them for the source of the glow. A specific example. You meet a man who's intelligent, profound, with eyes that seem to read your soul. He doesn't say much, sometimes disappears for days, but when he returns, he brings an energy that melts you. You can't let go. Each time he leaves, it feels like losing a piece of your soul. Yet you can't fully understand him. Who is he? What does he think? What does he want? Jung would say, he is the face your animus has chosen, and this isn't love, not yet. It's a necessary stage of love, where you're in dialogue with your soul through the image of the other. The problem is, if you don't recognize this, you'll cling desperately to that image. When the man starts to seem ordinary, no longer mysterious or profound as you imagined, you'll feel betrayed. Not because he changed, but because the image you projected onto him has faded. And if you don't understand this as projection, you'll try to restore the illusion instead of awakening to love the real person. Jung believed true love only begins after the projection dissolves. That's when you see the other person as they are, not an idol, not an ideal, and still choose to stay. To do this, you must turn inward and ask, am I loving this person, or am I loving an unlived part of myself? I admire his strength, but is that the strength in me I haven't dared to express? The anima and animus don't come to deceive you. They come to awaken you. When you love their image in another, you're loving fragmented parts of yourself. And if you awaken, you can use the relationship to reclaim those lost parts: courage, trust, passion, creativity, depth, and freedom. This is why Jung saw relationships not as the goal, but as a means for individuation, the journey to becoming your whole self. If you resonate with what I'm saying, please leave a sign in the comments below. Your support means a great deal to me. And when you're brave enough to name your projections, you'll no longer love blindly. You'll love with presence, with awareness, with an open heart that doesn't lose itself. You'll stop begging the other to be your ideal, because you've begun to live that ideal within yourself. Jung described love as a ritual process where two souls touch the deepest parts of each other and themselves. It's a sacred ground where you must have the courage to step in with eyes wide open, letting your inner light meet the true light of the other. And if you can do that, if you recognize the projection and still choose to love, that love is no longer an illusion. It is a spiritual union, not because the other is perfect, but because you no longer demand they complete the parts of you that you haven't dared to live. However, one thing to note, The joy or peace you feel when you're together reveals little about the relationship or yourself. You must closely observe your emotions when he pulls away. Those are the truest signs to discern whether this love aligns with your soul. Number 4, hidden signs. What do you feel when he pulls away? Carl Jung once said, "Emotion is the chief source of consciousness. There is no change from darkness to light, or from inertia to movement without emotion. Emotions are the gateway to awareness. Without them, there is no awakening." So don't underestimate the feelings that arise when he pulls away. Don't rush to label your sadness or panic as weakness. They are not flaws, they are a map. A man who matters to you starts to grow distant. He doesn't vanish entirely, but his presence feels like a room that was once warm. The feeling of being small and the disconnection from your body are early warnings. The unconscious doesn't speak through logic. It speaks through nameless fatigue, quiet anxieties, and the sudden unease when a stranger's compliment feels impossible to accept because you're pouring all your energy into holding on to someone who isn't truly staying. If you walk away from a conversation with him feeling lighter, with a sense of inner peace despite no clear answers, that's a sign the connection doesn't consume you, but gives you space to be yourself. But if you leave with a heavy heart, feeling the need to prove yourself more, to be prettier, smarter, you're not in love. You're bargaining with your worth. Jung used the metaphor of the shadow in a dream. When you dream of someone chasing you, your first instinct is to run. But if you turn around and ask, "Who are you?" you'll be surprised to find it's a part of yourself you've never dared to face. Emotions work the same way. If you keep running from your fears, trying to control them to avoid feeling unsettled, you're running endlessly in that dream. So, one of the most crucial hidden signs of whether someone truly cares for you lies not in their actions, but in your state when they're absent. Someone who is truly connected to you won't make you lose your inner peace. They may need space, they may need time, but they don't leave you questioning your worth. When there is respect, clarity, and genuine emotion, even in silence, you still feel a sense of being held. Carl Jung didn't give you tools to hold on to others. He gave you a mirror. And in any relationship, the true hidden sign is always, am I still myself in this person's presence and their absence? When you start living authentically and answering these questions honestly, the external world begins to respond in a different way. Not because everything suddenly changes, but because you've shifted your frequency. And it's at that frequency that synchronicity begins to unfold. Number 5, synchronicity. Some moments make you pause, as if life itself has sent you a message meant only for you. An old friend calls right when you feel most alone. A book falls off a shelf, opening to the exact page you needed to read. A song plays in a cafe, its lyrics speaking directly to something you couldn't name. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. Not random, not superstition, but a synchronization between your inner world and the outer world. Jung didn't believe in pure chance. He believed that when you start living authentically, guided by intuition, deep emotions, and your undistorted self, the universe begins to respond. This doesn't come from logic. It comes from the unconscious, the part that connects you to all other life, to other people, to the flow of time and spirit. Synchronicity is when your personal unconscious touches the collective unconscious, creating signs in the physical world. A man you thought would never reappear in your life suddenly contacts you the very evening you wrote in your journal, "I'm ready to let go." Or, when you're about to return to a toxic relationship, you randomly play a podcast to fill the silence, and the host says something that stops you cold. Don't let loneliness pull you back to a place that broke you. No one knows what you're thinking, but those words arrive at the exact moment, in the exact tone, as if crafted just for you. On the surface, these might seem like coincidences. But if you've embarked on a journey of inner exploration, you'll understand. They are echoes. Synchronicity doesn't happen when you chase others. It happens when you return to yourself. It's the moment you step into the frequency of truth, and the universe begins to speak to you in a wordless language. The same applies in love. When you're frantically chasing a shadow, like a moth drawn to a flame, thinking it will warm you but only getting burned, the world outside stays silent. Not because it doesn't care, but because you're too consumed by the noise of your pursuit. But when you stop, when you cease chasing false light and turn inward to kindle your true flame, everything begins to shift. You were once the person standing at dusk, reaching for a kite floating just out of reach, thinking it was close, but the string was never tied to your hand. He said he loved you, but he was always like a shifting breeze. You lowered your expectations, shrank yourself, and stayed silent to keep that fragile connection from breaking. Until one morning, no rain, no wind, just sunlight touching your skin differently, you realized, I don't want to keep reaching for something that was never mine. And you let the kite go. No tears, no blame. For the first time, you feel your hands return to your body, no longer grasping, no longer weary, no longer serving someone else. And the world, as if responding to a profound shift, begins to move to a different rhythm. Jung wouldn't tell you whether to go back or not, but he would say, Notice how your inner emotions respond. If reading that message makes your heart leap with genuine joy, it might be an echo from the universe. But if you find yourself waiting, stand at a familiar crossroads, where most of us have paused at least once in life. One voice tells you that letting go of clinging when he leaves is right, while another convinces you that letting go is losing, is failure. Right there is where I'll now help you see. Letting go isn't the end. It's the first door leading you back to yourself. Number 6. Letting go is not failure. There's a common misconception. Letting go means giving up, surrendering, or losing. But for Carl Jung, letting go is not weakness. On the contrary, it's a conscious and powerful act, one your soul demands to return to a state of wholeness. Because some things you never truly held, yet you clung to them so tightly your hands bled, simply because you feared facing the emptiness within. Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." And nothing reveals who you are more clearly than the decision to release a relationship that no longer fits, no longer holds life, no longer feels true. Not because the other person is so terrible, but because you are no longer the person you once were. When you let go, you're not abandoning love. You're refusing to live falsely to yourself. You're telling the universe, I choose myself. I choose wholeness. I choose truth, even if it hurts. And that is the beginning of freedom. But letting go doesn't happen dramatically like in the movies. Often it unfolds quietly. No tears, no formal ending. Just one day, you wake up, look at their message, and instead of excitement or disappointment, you feel a stillness in your soul, a kind of peace that needs no one's validation, a light breath, as if, for the first time in months, you've shed a drenched coat from your body. Letting go isn't a fleeting act. It's a profound decision of consciousness, made after you've exhausted yourself trying to change what cannot be changed, After you've tried every way to be seen, heard, loved, only to receive emptiness in return. You were once like someone standing in the open sea, arms outstretched, calling to a ship that's already left the shore. You thought, if I shout louder, wait longer, swim better, maybe he'll come back. But the ship doesn't hear. And the longer you wait, the deeper the water rises to your chest. Letting go is when you stop watching that ship. You turn toward the shore, feel your feet numbed by the cold, see the sunset sky still there, and realize, I can survive if I swim back to myself. No one teaches you how to let go. Society tells you to hold on. Movies glorify persistence as the hallmark of true love. But Jung wouldn't champion that. For him, love should never be an excuse to deny yourself. If you must sacrifice your peace, your respect, your dignity to keep someone, that's not love. That's dependency. And dependency is a sign of a soul that hasn't yet returned to its center. Letting go, in the Jungian sense, is a spiritual ritual. It's standing at a crossroads. One path leads back to the familiar but painful, the other to the uncertain but honest. And though fear whispers, you'll be alone, no one's waiting for you, your true self murmurs, but this time, I'm not abandoning myself. Letting go is an act of clearing your inner space, making room for what truly aligns to enter. And often, when you release a misaligned relationship, you're not just letting go of a person, you're letting go of an old version of yourself, the one who always needed to be chosen, who needed to check their phone, who needed to prove their worth. People say, if they truly loved you, they wouldn't have left. Jung wouldn't say that. He'd say, if you truly love yourself, you wouldn't have stayed. Because love isn't about keeping someone else. Love is what keeps you from betraying yourself. You don't need to slam every door shut with fanfare. No need to unfriend. No need to write scathing farewells. You only need a quiet, steadfast decision. I will no longer give my heart to a place where there's no life. And strangely, when you truly let go, it's not them who come back. It's you who returns. Jung called this a step in the process of individuation, the journey to becoming your fullest, truest self. And sometimes to grow, you don't need to add anything more. You just need to release what is no longer you. Sometimes you must accept that people change and anyone can leave you. You cannot grow if you keep demanding others stay, just so you don't have to face the gaps within yourself. Jung never framed letting go as an act of weakness. For him, it was a ritual of rebirth. A soul that hasn't touched its deepest losses will never be vast enough to hold love. You cannot build mature love on a foundation of fear of being left behind. And you certainly cannot welcome someone new if your hands are still clinging to a dream that's already dead. He may have once been your light, but that light is no longer here. And your task isn't to chase a sun that's set. It's to learn how to kindle a new spark from within your soul. I sincerely thank you for staying with me until the end of this video. If this content has moved you, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You may have never realized that your inability to accept yourself drives love away from you. Not because you're not good enough, beautiful enough, or successful enough, but deep in your unconscious, you are still rejecting a part of yourself. A part you consider weak, ugly, shameful, the part Jung called the shadow. You might say you love yourself, but if that love only exists when you're competent, when you're in control of your emotions, when you're recognized, then that isn't love, that's a condition. And true love from another person cannot exist on the foundation of that inner division. No one can fully love you until you dare to face the part of yourself you've been denying. And when you do, a door will open, not only to love, but to deep healing and the inner freedom you've always been searching for. If you're tired of repeating the same painful patterns in your relationships, keep reading, because what you're about to understand may completely change the way you love and the way you are loved. Before we go any further, take 10 seconds to ask yourself this question. Is the love I'm seeking coming from fear or wholeness? 1. The core issue. You cannot be truly loved if you don't know who you are. Love will always miss its chance with you if you don't even know who you are. Not who you are on social media, not who you are on your resume, not who you are in polite conversations, but your real self, including the parts you're trying to hide, avoid, or feel ashamed to admit. We grow up learning how to perform a more acceptable version of ourselves, strong, positive, understanding, likable, and successful. We believe that if we can present well enough, look good enough, and behave well enough, someone will love us. But here's the problem. Real love would go smoothly. But the truth is, they are not the problem. They are simply a mirror reflecting you to yourself. Carl Jung called this phenomenon projection. When you haven't yet seen a certain part of yourself, you unconsciously project it onto others. You're not hurt by them. You're hurt by the parts of yourself that they activate, the parts you haven't yet identified, made peace with, or accepted. For example, if you feel irritated by someone arrogant, pause and ask yourself, What exactly is making me uncomfortable? Maybe you do dislike arrogance, but on a deeper level, maybe you're also denying the part of yourself that is confident, expressive, and willing to claim your value. You label that part as arrogance, so you suppress it and keep it down. Then, when someone openly displays it, you feel tense, because they are doing what a hidden part of you still longs to do, but has been silenced for so long. Or when you feel frustrated with someone weak, someone who complains a lot, someone who seems irrational, maybe you don't hate them. Maybe you're rejecting the vulnerable part of yourself, the part that was once judged as weak, useless, or a burden to others. You've learned how to stay in control, to be strong, to be logical. And now, you project that rejection onto other people. The people you meet don't show up randomly. Every strong reaction inside you is a signal. They don't come to hurt you. They come to show you where you're still unhealed. And the transformational question is no longer, why are they like that? It becomes, what is this person showing me about myself? This is not a way to blame yourself. It's a way to reclaim your power. Because when you begin to see the mirror in every relationship, you're no longer a victim of your circumstances. You become the learner, the one who grows, and the one who heals. Think of someone who recently made you upset or infatuated. If you can pause your judgment for a moment, what part of you are they reflecting? 3. The root of every painful relationship, inner fragmentation. You don't attract love through the words you say, the philosophies you memorize, or the principles you share in conversations. You attract love, or more accurately, relationships, through your true inner state, through the emotional energy field that radiates from within you, whether you are aware of it or not. If there is still fragmentation within you, parts you deny, hide, suppress, or refuse to acknowledge, then the relationships you enter will reflect that same inner division. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In love, this is terrifyingly true, because what you haven't seen in yourself will repeat itself through others, not to punish you, but to get your attention. You are not hurt by others. You are hurt by the parts of yourself that they trigger, the parts you haven't accepted, acknowledged, or healed. And the truth is, love is not what hurts you. Love is light. What hurts you is the darkness within you that has never been brought into the light. The fears, the wounds, the limiting beliefs that pure love accidentally touches. For example, if you grew up believing that you're only valuable when you perform well, when you're perfect, and when you don't burden others, you'll create a mask of independence, strength, and stability. You'll be great at taking care of others, solving problems, and always appearing grounded. But deep inside you is a tired child who longs to be held without needing to prove anything. You hide that child. You call it weak, annoying, and too emotional. Then you find yourself drawn to someone who is also cold, independent, or even emotionally distant, and you wonder why you love them, why you're drawn to people who make you feel abandoned. The truth is, they are not the problem. They are the perfect mirror, reflecting the exact part of you that you've rejected. When they don't take care of you, it hurts. Not because they're unkind, but because they awaken the feeling you once had when your inner child wasn't loved unless it behaved. You're not angry at them. You're angry at yourself for not protecting that fragile part of you from the beginning. On the other hand, maybe you keep getting drawn to people who are controlling, jealous, or demanding. On the surface, you resist. You say you hate feeling restricted, but if you go deeper, you might realize that you were once neglected, ignored, and made to feel invisible. And now, when someone tries to control you, you feel conflicted and uncomfortable, yet unable to leave, because they are doing something that a hidden part of you deeply needs: to be seen, to be noticed, and to feel like you matter to someone. This is how the unaccepted parts of you guide you into the wrong relationships, not to make you suffer, but to help you recognize them. It is the ruthless yet perfect logic of consciousness. An unhealed wound will find every way it can to be heard, even through choices that seem completely irrational. When you don't understand this, love becomes a cycle of unhealed pain. You fall in love, get hurt, feel disappointed, blame yourself or the other person. You think you've learned the lesson, yet the same pattern repeats. You may change partners, but the feelings stay the same. You may become stronger, but deep down, you still feel alone, lying next to someone. Because love cannot fill a self that is divided. The problem is not with the other person. The problem is not that you chose wrong. The problem is that you are attracting exactly the type of person who can trigger the parts of yourself you've been rejecting. And the important thing is, you're not doing this because you're stupid or weak. You're doing it because your mind is trying to heal in the only way it knows how, by putting you face to face with your wounds. The more you deny something in yourself, the more likely it is to show up through someone else. Hate arrogant people. Maybe you're rejecting your confidence, annoyed by people who always need help. Maybe you're angry at the part of you that also needs help, but doesn't dare ask. Can't stand overly emotional people. Maybe you're suppressing your own emotions so tightly that you're afraid if you let go, you'll fall apart. Love is not a place to hide from yourself. Love is where everything you haven't healed will rise to the surface. And if you're not ready to see it, you'll blame the other person, walk away, and repeat it all with someone else. But if you dare to look at your reactions and ask the real question, what is this person triggering in me? You'll begin to see the map of your emotional world. And from that moment, the healing begins. Because you're no longer trying to change others. You begin to return to yourself. You realize that every wound is not a punishment, but an invitation. Every emotional reaction is not a weakness, but a signal from a part of you longing to be embraced. You will no longer need someone perfect to feel loved. You'll only need a whole version of yourself, with nothing to hide, nothing to control, nothing to prove. And from that place, you can finally enter love, not to be completed, but to connect, to grow, and to heal together. 4. The path to transformation. It begins with honesty and non-judgment. Once you've realized understand yourself, but if you observe it as a signal, you get closer to the shadow, the part of you that was once hurt, but never truly seen. Jealousy works the same way. Jealousy doesn't make you a bad person. It signals a desire for something you haven't permitted yourself to have. Maybe you're jealous of someone's success because you were taught to suppress ambition. Maybe you're jealous of someone's happiness because deep down, you still don't believe you deserve joy. In any case, if you push the emotion away or hide it, it only grows in the dark. But if you face it honestly and gently, you begin to recover the parts of yourself that were once left behind. This kind of observation needs practice, and one of the most practical and powerful ways to begin is emotional journaling. Not to vent, but to trace your inner patterns. Write about the times you felt triggered by someone. Write in detail. What happened? What did you feel? How did you react? And most importantly, has this reaction shown up before? Does it feel familiar from a past situation? Have you felt something like this with your mother, father, or childhood friends? Have you ever said something similar to yourself? As you continue this process, your writing will begin to connect the emotional dots inside you. You'll start to see that your current emotions are not just about the other person. They are about you, about the parts of you that were hidden, feared, or never allowed to fully exist. Another helpful practice is noting your emotional triggers, the things that spark strong reactions. Pay attention to the moments when you overreact, a sarcastic comment that makes you explode, a message left unread that feels deeply wounding, a confident coworker that makes you uncomfortable. Don't stop at the surface. Ask deeper. Why does this make me react so strongly? What is this touching inside me? Slowly, you'll start to see that every reaction is a doorway to a part of you that's been denied. And if you have the honesty to walk through that door, you begin to reintegrate the pieces of yourself that were once broken or fragmented. There is one thing, however, that is deeply important. Do not judge yourself when you recognize your shadow. There will be moments when you see yourself as selfish, controlling, jealous, demanding, and petty, and you'll want to look away, to cover it up, to pretend it's not there. But in those exact moments, you need to stay with yourself more than ever. Accepting your darkness does not mean justifying harmful behavior. It means you're willing to face it, to listen, and to understand that every shadow expression is an effort to survive. Anger may be a shield for pain. Control may be a defense against abandonment. Arrogance may be the mask of a child who once felt invisible. When you see the motive behind the behavior, you stop hating yourself. You begin to feel compassion. And from that compassion, true transformation begins. It starts with seeing, with understanding, with forgiveness. Not for others, but for yourself. Stay committed to this process. Make it a habit to notice your emotions each day. Write them down, ask deeper questions, and explore your reactions. Practice breathing before you respond. Stay with uncomfortable emotions instead of running from them. Don't try to rush through. Stay and listen. You can create a safe space for yourself, one without judgment, without right or wrong, only honest presence. And in that space, you can begin to invite your shadow parts back home. You can say to the part of yourself you once rejected, I don't need you to disappear. I just need to understand you and let you return to your rightful place within me. This does not happen in a single day. It is a soul reunion, bit by bit, moment by moment, each time you choose to stay with your emotions rather than escape them. Each time you write down the truth instead of making excuses. Each time you catch yourself reacting and say, I understand why. And then something beautiful happens. The people who used to hurt you no longer have the same power. The old patterns begin to lose their pull. You start making different choices, not because you force yourself to change, but because you have become someone new, someone more whole, more aware, more loving toward yourself. Deep transformation doesn't begin from the outside in. It begins the moment you dare to look within, without running, without judgment, just quietly observing, noticing, and embracing yourself. If you have a notebook nearby, take a few minutes to write about the last time you felt triggered. Don't try to fix it, just observe. 5. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the part you need to integrate. Most of us are taught that certain parts of ourselves are bad, unacceptable, or should be eliminated. We learn to control anger, suppress sadness, repress desire, avoid pain, and always strive to become a better version of ourselves, usually based on someone else's definition of better. But Carl Jung once said, "I'd rather be whole than good." Because if you only try to be good while forgetting who you truly are, you will live forever in fragmentation. The shadow is not your enemy. It is a living part of you. It doesn't only contain pain, wounds, anger, or jealousy. The shadow also includes rejected talents, power, and beauty. Jung emphasized this clearly. The shadow is 90% pure gold, meaning the shadow does not only hold negativity, but also carries your unlived potential, the precious aspects of your being that have been forgotten. You cannot throw away the shadow. You can only push it deeper into the layers of your psyche, into the personal unconscious. But what is repressed does not stay quiet. It simply changes form and finds a way to return through your behaviors, emotional reactions, dreams, mental struggles, and especially through intimate relationships. Jung called this phenomenon compensation, where the unconscious tries to restore balance when consciousness rejects a part of the self. If you were once mocked for expressing yourself, you might suppress your boldness, pride, and creativity, pushing them into your shadow. But then you'll find yourself drawn to people who are expressive and radiant. They make you feel small, both in admiration and in envy. The issue isn't with them. It's your ego reacting to a part of your shadow that has not been integrated. Or if you were punished for showing anger as a child, you may learn to be the calm, kind, and compliant one. But then you're pulled toward people who are aggressive, blunt, hot-tempered, or you find yourself hurt by them. The truth is, they are living out the rage you've denied, the part you never dared to face, but that still exists in you as unprocessed energy. Jung called this projection a defense mechanism where we unconsciously project the traits we reject in ourselves onto others. When you continue to reject your shadow, you not only exhaust yourself by trying to control your behavior, but you also live in a world where you don't understand why people keep hurting you. Because in reality, you're trapped in a cycle. Your unconscious is constantly drawing in people and situations that trigger the parts of yourself you refuse to face. Jung described this through the concept of enantiodromia, the tendency of the suppressed extreme to return in its opposite form. The more you try to repress something, the more powerfully it comes back, in ways you can no longer control. That is why so many people are caught in conflicted relationships, where love and pain coexist intensely, not because someone else. You love from a place where you are already yourself, and the person who is right for you will be someone who is not afraid of your light or your darkness. 6. Self-love is an act of courage, not a slogan. We live in a time where the phrase "love yourself" appears everywhere, on social media, in books, printed on hoodies, and even on cute coffee mugs. Just love yourself, people say, as if it were a magical formula anyone can apply after a few lines of positive self-talk. But the truth is, most people don't understand what self-love means. They confuse it with indulgence, with giving up, with rationalizing behaviors they're not yet ready to change. Real self-love is not a sweet message written in a fancy font and taped to your mirror every morning. It is not shopping to numb your feelings or taking a trip to reset your mind. Self-love isn't as pretty as an Instagram photo. It is an act of courage, quiet, steady, and often uncomfortable. It means being willing to sit with yourself when you feel messy, unkind, hurt, or wrong. It's the moment you face the parts of yourself you've long avoided, not to criticize or fix them, but simply to say, "I see you, and I'm still here with you." Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And this is deeply true in love. You cannot healthily love someone, and you cannot be fully loved by someone else if you're still running from yourself. When you haven't fully accepted who you are, love will always come with doubt. You will question if you are worthy. You will test, demand, overgive, or shut down, all out of fear that if the other person sees all of you, they will leave. And that's why the journey of self-love begins with one honest and vulnerable step: writing a letter to your shadow. In Jung's language, the shadow is the collection of everything you've denied, suppressed, or been taught you shouldn't have. It is the anger you were afraid to express, the desire to be seen you once called arrogance, the vulnerability you were ashamed of. But the shadow can also hold repressed talents, silenced strengths, and dreams once labeled as unrealistic. The shadow isn't only the negative, it is the most instinctive, alive, and authentic part of you that got pushed into the unconscious because it wasn't accepted. Writing a letter to your shadow is a powerful but simple practice. Sit down, take a piece of paper, and begin with, "Dear shadow part of me," and let it all pour out. Tell it you see it, that you understand it was only trying to protect you in the only way it knew how. Say you're sorry for hating it, silencing it, pretending it didn't exist. And from now on, you're ready to listen, not to let it take control, but to walk alongside it as a rightful part of who you are. This isn't a meditation ritual. This is a reunion, a promise to yourself that you will no longer live in inner division. Take Lauren, for example, a product director in the tech industry in San Francisco. She is successful, confident, and capable, but in romantic relationships, she kept falling for emotionally distant partners who never truly saw her. After many painful endings, Lauren realized she had learned early on not to need anyone, because every time she showed emotions, she was called annoying or weak. She became strong, rational, and independent, but deep inside, she longed to be cared for, to lean on someone without shame. When Lauren wrote a letter to her shadow, the part that was taught needing others is wrong, she cried a lot, but afterward, she began to soften. She stopped chasing love from people who couldn't give, because now she allowed herself to receive. Or Daniel, a creative director in New York, who prided himself on being easygoing, flexible, and likable. Yet he often judged people who were too emotional, too assertive, too direct. Inside him was a part that had learned to shrink himself to avoid being bullied, and he had survived by being agreeable. His shadow was the confident voice that had been silenced. When Daniel began reconnecting with that part, he didn't become aggressive. He simply began setting boundaries. He stopped always saying, "It's fine," when it wasn't. He started choosing himself without feeling guilty, and for the first time, he could love without losing himself to be loved. In that way, self-love is no longer a vague idea. It becomes a series of quiet yet powerful acts. Journaling when you're upset instead of scrolling to forget. Looking at your anger and asking, what fear is being touched here? Allowing yourself to cry instead of holding it in. Saying no when you don't want to, even if the other person may be disappointed. And also being brave enough to say, I want to be loved without shame. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You don't become whole by pretending to be positive. You become whole by clearly seeing your darkness and still choosing to love yourself. Every time you sit with an uncomfortable feeling without judging it, you are integrating. Every time you write a truthful sentence about your jealousy, your hurt, or your fear, you are stepping out of fragmentation. And from that place, you no longer need someone to complete you. You don't love from lack. You love from fullness. Love, then, will come in a different form. Not explosive, euphoric highs followed by heartbreak, but deep, steady, and rooted. You'll begin to recognize that your past relationships were mirrors of the parts of you that had yet to be healed. And now you'll start attracting people who can truly meet you, not to save you, but to walk with you, because you've done it first with yourself. So loving yourself is not a declaration. It is not a perfect post. It is a daily commitment. It is when you're disappointed in yourself, but refuse to abandon yourself. It is when you choose to face what's inside instead of running. It is when you say, I will not turn my back on myself again. No one can truly love you if you are still rejecting yourself. Not because you are unworthy of love, but because real love can only be found where there is wholeness, where you are no longer fragmented, no longer hiding parts of yourself just to be accepted. As long as you're trying to become someone who is easier to love, you will continue to lose yourself in relationships that mirror fear, lack, and unhealed wounds. Love does not begin with someone else. It does not begin with a glance, a promise, or a romantic connection. It begins the moment you dare to look at yourself and say, I will not turn my back on myself again. The love you've been searching for isn't out there. It never was. It is not a reward for being good enough, strong enough, or worthy enough. It is the deepest essence within you, buried under shame, pain, expectations, and the masks life taught you to wear. When you stop running from yourself, when you dare to touch the parts of you that were never meant to be shown, you begin to become whole. Only from that wholeness can real love grow. No longer a power game, no longer a place to hide insecurity, but a safe space for growth, reflection, and shared evolution. Carl Jung didn't just teach us about the psyche. He offered us a way home, a way back to the deepest self, back to the forgotten human within, the repressed soul, the shadow left behind.